Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys for watching previous episodes, shorts, reels, everything. We've had some great engagement from y'all. It's been absolutely astonishing to see how far the reach has gotten. So we just want to thank you for that. Thank you for all your support. Um, Today we're going to be talking about the NHL trade deadline. Absolutely hectic week. Probably one of the biggest ones I've seen at least since I can remember. Um, Joey, you ready for this?
Let's get it started.
So the NHL trade deadline this year was probably one of the biggest, at least I remember in my lifetime. Um, it certainly left fans on the edge of their seats for the entire week. It wasn't up, down. It was pretty consistently crazy all over. Um, and so it certainly left me wondering who I was going to see leave from the Caps, who all was going to come in, what draft picks we were going to be able to get. So we saw some massive trades. Jake Gensel got dealt from the Penguins. He's headed down to the Hurricanes. Kuznetsov, leaving from the Capitals, also heading to the Hurricanes. The Golden Knights were able to somehow, in some way, add Thomas Hurdle, Noah Hannafin, Anthony Mantha, um, all while giving up quite a few draft picks. We'll get to that later. And so we also saw teams like the Rangers kind of add some underwhelming players. The Kings didn't make any moves at all. And so, how are we going to see the effects of this trade deadline play out into the playoffs and the postseason, and kind of see, are we going to see like a Rangers, not Rangers, Hurricanes, Knights, Stanley Cup, and who's going to lift the cup at the end of that 7 game series?
Of Carolina and Vegas.
Yes, I think those are the two front runners for right now, especially after the acquisitions made at the end of the deadline.
Well, here comes cap circumvention. Um, I like Carolina, but I mean, I gotta go with the team I trust. I seen Carolina do the same thing last year and get swept by Florida, who was like a wild card team. So, I don't trust Carolina. They haven't been able to do it in the playoffs. No matter how good they are. I don't trust Carolina, so I'm gonna go with Vegas because they're the team that they made the cup twice in like the last what 6 years, 7 years.
For them being an expansion team, the way their GM and their front office has been able to run, it has been a masterclass. Usually, it takes teams years to reach the cup. I mean, if you're a Leafs fan, probably hasn't happened in your lifetime. So, I mean, if you're living in that Vegas area, you you're winning in the sport of hockey right now. Phenomenal what their front office has done. So obviously, Vegas, one of our winners at the deadline. Carolina, one of our winners at the deadline. Who would you pick as another winner for the deadline?
Um, Florida. Florida's a big winner. The rich got richer. Colorado, rich got richer again. Um, a lot of this deadline was the rich getting richer. Like you look at all the trades. Most of the deadline is the rich getting richer. Like you said, Carolina, Vegas, Colorado, Florida. Those are the four teams that that I think really like just stepped up. And there's got to be the front runners in the conference championships. They've got to be, and one from each division too. One from each division.
So just for those listening, watching at home, at time of recording, the Florida Panthers are currently first in the Atlantic with 92 points. Um, Boston close behind. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out the rest of the season. See if there's a gap that widens between Carolina and Boston. Um, and then not Carolina, Florida and Boston, my bad. Um, Carolina currently sits second in the Metro behind New York, who very interesting what they did at the deadline. We'll get into that here in a minute. Um, Carolina currently with 84 points. Do you see them catching a Florida or Boston for the President's Cup trophy?
Who?
Carolina, do you see them winning the President's Cup trophy?
Um, I think it's gonna be Florida. I think Florida's gonna um separate themselves. I think Florida's got the goaltending. They've got the decor. They've vastly upgraded their offense. They're not at least 9 deep on at the forward. They've got two solid centers, which is what you need to go win a cup. You look at Vegas last year, two centers deep. Colorado the year before, McKinnon and Kadri. Um, Tampa Bay, Stamkos and Point. So all these cup winners are two centers deep. That's what scares me about Boston. They don't have center depth. Who's I can't. I think Pavel Zacha's their number one center, and then who's behind them? Like you look at this Colorado or not Colorado, Boston forward group. They're not good on paper. They got Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, but they're not good on paper. I don't trust Boston. I don't think they're going to be able to score with teams like. I don't think they're going to be able to score 4 goals a game. I think that's what you're going to need to go beat some of these teams in Carolina, which Carolina plays a more defensive style with Brendan Moore, but Carolina, I think Carolina's going to run into someone in the first or second round, a wild card team, and I don't think they're going to be able to, um, I don't think they're going to be able to beat them, which it makes me nervous. Or even one of these 3 seeds, I don't see Carolina being able to score with them. I don't see Boston being able to score some of these teams. Um, Especially against the team that gets hot at the right time. Like they got swept last year against the team that got hot at the right time. I feel like Carolina's always that team that loses a hot team in the playoff in the East every year. I forget who they lost to in 22, but I think that was another hot team, that a team that got hot at the right time. And I know it wasn't Tampa who made it to the Cup in 22. So we'll see. I think it's going to shape up to be a great April, May, and June. But I just don't trust some of these teams. I think a lot of these teams are pretenders.
So in the West, it is a gauntlet. I mean, teams are beating up on each other. Vegas currently holds the second wild card spot in the West, believe it or not. The
But they are
Pacific,
4 games up. They're four
yes.
games up on every team, or 3 games up on it. 4 games up on everyone but Seattle. Because I looked at this not that long ago. They're 3 games up on Seattle, and they're 4 games up on everyone else.
So with Vegas holding that wild card, LA, Edmonton, and Vancouver currently hold the other spots in the Pacific. How do you see that playoff race uh, finishing out, especially with what the depth Vegas added at the deadline? Do you think they're gonna launch in, take that first seed for the Pacific, or how do you see that kind of going through this April or through the rest of March, April, and early May?
I just don't think there's enough games left. I don't think they're catching Vancouver. Vancouver's too good, especially with PD locked up now. I don't see them catching Vancouver, and I hope Vegas stays in the wild card because I want another Edmonton LA series because those have been fun the last 2 years. I've enjoyed those. So stay in a wild card, Vegas, and get a bad draw with Vancouver, or I forget the other team at first. Is it Dallas?
Dallas is leading the Central to 89 points
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, and then it's Colorado and I don't know who the other
Winnipeg
teams.
to finish out. So
Winnipeg. Okay.
Winnipeg's in second, Colorado's in third in the
Which
Central.
Winnipeg's the dark horse for winner of the deadline. Winnipeg made some moves with Toffoli and we'll get into it, but Toffoli and they got someone else. I can't remember the other trade. I got to go look at it, but Winnipeg made some moves.
So we've talked about kind of our biggest winners. Some of the teams didn't really do much. One of those being the Kings. They're one of my biggest losers at the deadline. Um, they made no moves at all. No trades, no no acquisitions, no one leaving, just stayed the same. Surprises me. They've had three notable guys go down, and they could have used some fortifying in net. Um, Victor Arvidsson has gone down in the past 2 weeks. Don't know how long he'll be out for. Mikey Anderson, somewhat solid for them defensively this year, gone down. I don't know how long he'll be out for. And then Adrian Kempe, I believe he went down this past week. Again, I think he might be out for a sustained amount of time. So with three guys who Arvidsson and Kempe, pretty crucial to that offense there in LA. Why would the Kings not make any moves? I know they're restricted there in their cap, but I feel like you got to help this team out somehow. Try if you're gonna hope to stay in the playoff race and then make some runs late.
I think they've already built the shit. They're gonna ride it out and hope they get some big performances from rookies. I mean, if you're the Kings, you're second or third in the Pacific. I don't have the thing pulled up, so like I'm not sure how many points games they are ahead, but I mean, I got it pulled up right here. Like some of these teams, I don't understand. You don't make any moves. In Dallas, you don't make any moves. Edmonton, and I get Dallas. I mean, you can ride it out with the team you have, okay. And Dallas made two moves since January 31st. Um, Edmonton, you don't make any moves. I don't get that on deadline day. Um, you made two moves since January 31st. I don't get that. LA, you haven't made any move since January 31st. The Islanders, I just I don't understand it. Seattle, I mean Vancouver, you're first, but Seattle, you don't make any moves. You're you're the closest team to Vegas. You're 3 games back, and there are a lot of holes in that Seattle team that you could have plugged up. You imagine Toffoli on Seattle. But I don't understand the Kings. I don't know what they're doing. Um, like I said, you built the ship. I mean, you can ride it out, but I just don't understand why. There are enough guys on the block, and I seen I think it was Ryan Whitney say that first round picks don't matter anymore on trade deadline day. And that's true to an extent. Because a lot of the guys you get that become superstars aren't first round draft picks. A lot of them end up being bust. I mean, look at the number one pick. The look at the top two picks on the Rangers and Kako and Lafreniere. Number one, number two picks, and they have not been elite. They have not been what you would think a number one and a number two pick would be. So I don't understand the Kings. Um, they could have done better. What do you think? Because I got no answers.
I'm kind of left baffled at what the Kings did, especially when you have some of your more elite players go down. Again, I haven't looked in too far on how long they're going to be out for, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out if they're able to come back, and if they can get the ball rolling heading into the playoffs because you want to get hot right before, get everything clicking, and get moving right as the playoffs start rolling. Therefore, you're not wasting any time. You're going right into it. So that will be interesting how that plays out. Um, Interesting strategy. Not sure if it'll pay off. If the Kings end up at worst not making the playoffs, I think there's going to be some firing in the front office with how they handled this deadline. Not making any acquisitions when you have guys who are injured. Um, Given they're they're restricted a little bit with the cap, but again, we've seen how Vegas has gone and circumvented that. Um, so I think the Kings need to take a page out of Vegas's book, go and figure out the inner workings of the cap and kind of work around that and be able to add more depth, more skill to be able to dominate and try and win the race. Um, and then another one of the losers I had was the Devils. They've been somewhat solid this year.
Well,
Current
I think the Devils were late sellers. That's the only thing. I think they were late sellers because they fired Lindy, and I don't think they're trying to make a run at it this year. So I mean, they're
they're,
losers because they had the team to make the playoffs, or they had the team, and now they became late sellers and just are riding the rest of the season out. Which find it funny that their downfall started when Jack Hughes said, "People pay to watch me play."
is a bitch. I mean, you can't go out and be a dick like that when you're an elite athlete and then expect for your season to continue to go well. I mean, the snake bit him in the butt there. But I mean, New Jersey acquired two goalies, which they needed. They need some help in the goaltending. Vanacek's been pretty bad this year, to say the least. But the goalies they picked up are solid, like backup goalies. Like if I was a Caps fan, I'd be happy with having someone like that backing up Kemper or Lindgren, who I'm content with what the Caps have in net. But if I'm a Devils fan, I'm sitting here wondering, hey, why did we just pick up two kind of backups when on the market there's still Olmark and Markstrom out there who are both very very well established goaltenders, um, in my opinion. And so I get there's again cap problems, but there's ways to work around that. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know how if Allmark would have. I think because I know both those players that you just mentioned, Markstrom and Allmark, those they both have NTCs. So, and which is why Allmark didn't get traded to the Kings. Because I think Allmark was gonna get traded to the Kings, and then he said no because he's NTC because he didn't want to go for geography, didn't want to move his family, whatever. So that one, I just I mean, the Devils were late sellers. They're gonna recoup and run it back next year. Free agency will be interesting with them because they did just dump a bunch of cap. Um, and so other teams are better for it. You didn't see any wild card teams make a push except Vegas, which Vegas you kind of already think's a contender.
Yeah,
Even if you take away the cap circumvention out of it, like you still think Vegas is a contender. I still think Vegas is a contender, even though they're like, and they've got a comfy lead in that wild card spot. Because 6 points is a lot, or 4 games, 3 games is a lot, especially with Seattle not making any moves. So I don't think Seattle is trying to go for it, and so and I don't remember how it sat on Friday, but right now it sits that Seattle's 3 games back. So if I'm Vegas, I'm feeling pretty comfy right now. I Vegas is gonna be good when playoffs come, especially with Stone coming back. Stone's coming back within no later than the second round. Um, yeah, I think firing your coach not even a week before the deadline hurts. Because typically the GM and ownership go and communicate with the coach and see what do we need. Because what do you think we need? Where do you think we need to go? And they got backup goalies, but that's not going to solve your problem. And I don't know if Lindy was the problem. I think that team is just too young, and they're not going to do anything. Even if they were to make the playoffs this year, they shocked the world and beat the Rangers last year, but they got stopped by Carolina. I think Carolina beat them 4-1 last year. So they're too young to do anything, and that's still going to be the case until you get some older guys in there. And that's why I talked about last week how I like Detroit's makeup. Granted, they didn't make any moves because I think a lot of it plays into the fact that Larkin got hurt. I don't think they made any moves because of that, which I don't hate as a Red Wings fan. I don't hate Detroit not making any moves. Um, and just let that prospect pool go up, continue working up. Um, but it some big losses for certain teams in that deadline. And it's more of like the inactivity, which because I don't think there were a lot of bad trades made. I don't think there are a lot of bad trades. I don't think anyone really got fleeced. I think a lot of guys I think just a lot of teams were losers because they didn't make enough moves. And like I said with Boston, like you had you need a number 2 center desperately. I get you try to trade Olmark. I think they would have he would have gone towards 2 center. But I just don't understand why you don't make any moves. You got pieces. You're overloaded on defense. But it'll be interesting how it plays out. I mean, Boston's an organization that knows how to win. Kings not so much. They haven't won anything in a while. Since the Cup in 2012, I think it was.
That Alec Martinez goal, we talked about that, I think, episode 1.
Yeah, something like that. Henrik Lundqvist just laying flat after that goal.
So, speaking of Henrik Lundqvist, probably one of the all-time Ranger greats. The Rangers, in my opinion, had a very questionable deadline. I like their Alex Wennberg acquisition. I find that pretty solid. I don't understand the Rosovic acquisition. Chad
I
Ruedel,
didn't hate it. I didn't hate it.
he
He's a
he
four center.
I'm
He's a
it,
four center and he's a penalty killer. That's what he is. I don't
so
know the Rangers penalty killing right now, but that's what he is.
so for me, when I look at what's available, Nick Dowd from the Washington Capitals, I think would have been a great acquisition for the Rangers. Kind of a great renter there. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I think right around $1 million in uh, annual average value, AAV, whatever the
Cap it.
wording. Yeah. Um, so when I look at that, and I being a Caps fan, I've seen Dowd play. I think Dowd would have been a better acquisition for New York. I think my problem with Rozovic is he's so inconsistent. He's had the problems with kind of being hot and cold. When you look at Dowd, he's a little bit more like you know what you're going to get with him. Um, I think he's been a great third line guy for the Caps. And so I think he could have plugged that hole for New York where they needed that depth at forward. So certainly see how that goes and if that affects the Rangers or if that Rozovic deal will end up being like a hidden gem and he ends up finally developing into a better forward than what he was in Columbus.
Yeah, wasn't he from Winnipeg or did he get traded from Columbus?
I believe he got traded from Columbus.
Okay, I know he was
Yeah.
with Winnipeg initially,
So and
but
then
I mean,
Columbus
Columbus
is
is Columbus
retaining.
though. I mean, Columbus is a garbage organization. Um, can't figure it out. They had that great run in 2020, I think it was. Or it was 2019. 2019 they had that run and got matched up with Vegas, I think it was. But I just I don't I don't hate the deal. You fill in some forward depth, but I don't think that's going to be the problem with the Rangers. The problem with the Rangers is they can't get their top lines to score in the playoffs. I mean, Patrick Kane, and love him, he's on Detroit now, but Patrick Kane didn't do anything. Panarin didn't do anything. Zibanejad didn't do anything. And this all goes back to last year's. If you don't get that top line, those top 2 lines, those top 6 forwards scoring in the playoffs, you're not going to win a series. It takes 8, 9, 20 guys on the roster to win this cup. It's not your bottom 6 that wins it. It's not the top 6 that wins it. It's not your top line defense, not your bottom four defense. Like, or your backup goalie or your starting goalie. None of that wins you a cup. More often than not, it's at least 19 guys. A lot of teams, it's 20 guys, unless you have a goalie that gets hot, uh, aka Aiden Hill. Um, so, um, I don't, I, I don't, I'm not concerned with the Rangers bottom six. I mean, yes, that's a hole, but that wasn't the problem. The problem is you can't score. You can't score with your top lines. That's why you lost last year to New Jersey. Their young top lines. New Jersey's got hot, and yours didn't. And your top lines woefully got outscored, and your bottom six forwards just aren't going to keep up with a, any top 16 team in a 7-game series.
So, kind of back to what I was saying about the Nick Dowd and Roslovic comparison. I got some numbers here. Columbus is going to retain half of Roslovic's 4 million AAV. So he's going to cost the Rangers $2 million at least this year. I think it expires next year. I'm not entirely sure.
If it's
Whereas,
retained, probably.
so with Nick, but I think with the retain, it's the retention. I think is just going to cut off. Um, but with Nick Dowd only being in that 1.3 million range, that's saving $700,000. Given it's not a lot, when you talk about teams getting up there close to the cap, I feel like that 700 or 700,000 can go a long way in being able to kind of move some of those guys in that bottom six forwards, being able to add that depth, whether it be a center or wingers, which is what the Rangers needed. So if you look at that and you're the Rangers front office, would you have wanted to try and go and possibly send a sixth, fifth through seventh rounder to Washington for Nick Dowd? And like, what would your thoughts be on a potential New York Washington trade there prior to the deadline expiring?
I think they're pretty comparable. Dowd's still a penalty killer. Um, you know more about Dowd than I do. I haven't watched a lot of him. I haven't watched a lot of Roslovic. Um, but I think they're relatively comparable. I mean, the 700,000 would be nice, but I don't see any of those guys returning next year. I think and if they do, they're gonna go out into free agency and then re-sign them. Um, but I mean, I wouldn't have hated that trade. I don't hate the Rocksteady trade. Um, I think they should have gone out and gotten. I think a lot of the problem is cap, but I think a lot of it's they should have gone out and gotten Casey Middlestat. I think they should have gotten a middle six forward instead of a bottom six forward. I think that's what they should have done. You're not going to make your top line any better. You already got pretty elite top tier talent. Um, But I think they should have gone out and gotten a middle six forward like Middlestat. Gensel, that was a high price tag, but even Kuzi could have gone out and gotten Kuzi. That's a great you could put him at a 3 center, especially with what he's been through going to the player assistance program. Um so that's where I would have gone, but I don't hate what the Rangers did. I just don't think it was enough. And I think they could have used another top four defenseman. But
So, talking about Kuznetsov, we're going to kind of segment our way into the next portion of what we're going to talk about. When you look at what Carolina did at the deadline, I mean, the Gensel trade was massive. I mean, I think they gave up a couple guys and what, 3 picks.
one, I'm about to pull it up.
Um, I had looked at it, but I mean, the package that was sent to Pittsburgh was pretty thick.
All right, you
But
ready?
yeah,
All right. So Jake Gensel goes to Carolina, 25% retained and Ty Smith. Jake Gensel and Ty Smith, which Ty Smith isn't a bad pickup. That's a seventh defenseman. So that wasn't a bad pickup. But and then so So going to Pittsburgh is Michael Bunting, Vasily Ponomarev, Cruz Lucius, Billy Koivunen, and so those are the players. The second through the fourth are all prospects. And then you have a 2024 conditional second round pick, and it goes to a first if Carolina makes the Cup final. And then the fifth round pick transfers only if the Canes win the Cup. So Carolina will still keep that more than likely because I don't think they're winning the Cup. But like I don't think this is a bad trade. Um, because if you make the Cup final, if you're Carolina, please take my first round pick. Um, I think Carolina won that trade. Looking at it, especially with 25% retained. So they could go get Kuznetsov. Like I said, Ty Smith was a good pickup. And then you got Kuznetsov going for 50% retained and for a 2025 third rounder. So, I mean, Kane's front office was dealing. I like those trades for Carolina. I don't think the Capitals got enough for Kuznetsov, but I think they knew they were going to trade him when he went back into the assistance program. But
I think when he got sent down to the AHL, everyone kind of was like, okay, his time, at least with the Capitals in the NHL, was nearing an end. Um,
well, when he got sent down, that was because he was getting traded.
yeah, and so it allowed for us to be able to work with the guys we had up in the bigs at that point a little better. But when I look at the Kuznetsov trade and I look at the Gensel trade, both of these guys were instrumental in um, their respective teams' playoff runs. Gensel obviously helped Pittsburgh win the back-to-back. Almost had that three-peat. Washington knocked him out there in 2018, and then Kuznetsov had I think 32 points in 24 games in Washington's 2018 Stanley Cup run, and so if you're Carolina, you're adding guys who've done what you want to do before. Carolina hasn't won the cup. You're adding veteran guys who've been there, done that, and in Gensel's case, multiple times. So now, if Carolina isn't able to win, how big of a failure is it?
Freddie's got to stay healthy. So I still think Frederick Anderson's the best goalie on the roster. He just came back from injury. He's got to stay healthy because I've seen that man play in the playoffs before. I've seen what he's and when they lose with him in net, it's not on him. It's typically lack of defense. They've got they got extra defense depth. They've already got a solid top four. They've got two goalies. I don't see a way where Carolina doesn't go to at least the conference final. I don't think they match up very well with Florida. I think they match up against most teams, but I don't think they match up against Florida. Because I think Florida's the question for Carolina in the playoffs is, are they physical enough? That's been their problem the last couple of years, and you didn't change that. That's why I liked Boston getting Pat Maroon. Granted, they didn't solve their biggest problem, but they got more physical. The teams that win the cup, like Vegas, Colorado, I mean they had enough physicality with Jack Johnson and Nazem Kadri to go win that cup, but they weren't the most physical team. But and Florida made it to the cup because they were a gritty team. Um, Carolina's got to be physical, and it's playoff hockey. We always say everything changes when the playoffs starts. Especially with physicality. Physicality is a huge part of the playoffs. I don't I don't know if Carolina's going to have that physicality to go win because you didn't get that in Gensel and Kuznetsov. I mean, I'm not saying they're like wimps or anything, but I just that's the thing that scares me with Carolina is you run into gritty team like Florida, you're not going to win. You're not physical enough. That's why Florida swept them last year. And that's the only thing that scares me. And is it a failure? I mean, it's been cup or bust for Carolina for a couple of years. You've got the coach, you've got the players, you've got the goaltending, you've got the defense, you've put all these pieces together. And I've seen Carolina make these moves last year, and it still didn't work. In the year before with the Burns, just to name one of them. I don't know if it's enough or if they can put these puzzle pieces together. I feel like every time they'll get an 100 on every assignment that the teacher gives them. But as soon as they walk into that test room, they're going to bomb the test at some point. At some section of that test, they're going to bomb it. It's not always the multiple choice. It's not always the short answer. But at some point, they bomb the test. And that's the problem with Carolina. And like I said earlier, until they prove it to me, I don't believe them.
So again, it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. So we know Carolina and Florida are like the big cup contenders, yes, or big contenders for the East. Would you take Carolina and Florida or the rest of the field to win the East?
Off the top of my head, I gotta go with Carolina or Florida.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
just
I'm
I don't I
I
just don't
I
see
don't see
another
anyone else.
team. I mean,
I don't
New York's
I
your
don't
best bet.
I don't think New
I don't
York's going to be able to compete.
I don't think New York's making it past the first round. I think they're gonna run into a hot wild card team. I'm telling you, New York runs into a healthy Red Wings team, they're not going to win a 7-game series. I'm telling you, their forwards are not going to be able to score. They're not going to be able to score in a 7-game series. I just don't see another team. I've got the list of teams pulled up here. I don't see another team that's just going to be able to run with these cats. I Toronto maybe, but
Toronto's got their problems with history, though, and I don't see Toronto with their
I don't see
current squad being able to win the cup.
what is the problem with Toronto is they're not physical enough.
It's the
Either that or
same.
it's the same problem every year, and they
It's the
still
same
don't
problem
go
with
out and
Carolina.
fix it.
They don't.
The problem with Toronto is they got 50 million in cap and 4 players. That's part of your problem. Or they've got like 60 million in cap tied up in like 5 players. That's part of your problem. That's the problem with Toronto is you can't go out and pay a goalie $5 million to come to you, an elite goalie to come to you. You can't go pay him $5-6 million a year to come to you because that's what most elite goalies are paid now. You can't go pay a goalie that because you're too busy paying Austin Matthews $15 million a year and William Nylander $12 million. And these aren't exact salaries, but Marner $10 million, Tavares $11 million, Riley $8 million. You're too busy paying all these guys $50 million, and you have like what is it like 25 million left in cap? That's not enough for the rest of your uh um the rest of your 15-man roster. The next 15 guys on your roster. It's just not enough. And that's the problem. And Carolina structures their contracts well. They can't pass the test. It's the same problem with Buffalo when they play Kansas City in the playoffs. To use a football reference. No matter how many times they take the test, they still can't pass it. They will always fail the test and they still can't pass it. It's like Kevin Hart in night school. Like that goes in and takes the test, like goes in and takes the test 15 times and still can't pass it no matter what you try. The numbers are still swirling around and they can't figure it out.
Just like Kevin Hart in night school, I think every test that Buffalo has taken with Kansas City proves to be quite the spectacle for us as the viewers, unless you're a Buffalo fan. But we'll see how that plays out come the fall and winter next year. But so we're going to take the field on that. I don't Florida adding Tarasenko, Oposo, and those are I think they're two bigger pickups. Oposo is getting kind of on the older side, but I like the Tarasenko acquisition. I think he'll be a pretty solid. I don't know where they're going to fit him in, but pretty
They fit
solid
him
pickup.
on. I think they fit him. I think they put him on the first line, and they put Chuck on the second. And Tarasenko's got scored 2 goals last night. It was either last night or I think it was last night. Tarasenko scored twice, and he looked good. And I mean, you haven't really seen a lot of Tarasenko because I think he was at Ottawa, and Ottawa is just a garbage organization. Um, but Tarasenko looks good, and my fear with Tarasenko is when he was on New York, he couldn't score. He didn't score last year in the playoffs. That's the thing that makes me worried. And I think Florida's a better team than New York is, but especially come playoff time. But that makes me nervous. But I still think Florida's the best team in the East. I still think they're gonna make another run at it, and I still think the team in the West is gonna take it. Whether that's Dallas, I I think Dallas has the same problem that Carolina has, but where they just can't pass the test. Um, but whether it's Dallas, Vancouver, who could finally be making some moves upwards. Um, I I just a lot of these teams I don't trust because I've seen this movie play out 100 times. It's like Edmonton, and they didn't make any moves. Edmonton has Edmonton sort of has Toronto syndrome, where and it's not even that they're paying the guys; they just paying the guys too much. They just won't go out and solve the problem. And Mike Smith's the best goalie they've had in the last couple years. And when they played Colorado in 2023, or I'm sorry, 2022, when they played Colorado in 2022 in the conference finals, Mike Smith played lights out, and you just couldn't keep up, and you don't have the depth. And Edmonton continues not to have the depth. I'm getting off topic, but back to where we were. Tarasenko looked good, and I think Florida's poised to make a run. I think Florida's. If I had to put money on it, I'm taking Florida to go back to the Cup final.
Okay, good with the sports bettors of the world out there. So real quick, just rattle off the top of your head. Who surprised you the most at the deadline?
I want to say Vegas, but I'm not surprised because that front office has balls. Um, Honestly, Edmonton. No moves, not one. You haven't made any moves to go improve your team. And I get Connor McDavid scoring 25 points a game, and he's averaging like 2.5 assists a game. But at some point, it's just not going to be enough come playoff time. And I just, I don't understand. I feel like Edmonton's like the Cowboys of the
NHL.
NHL, and like the Dodgers of the NHL. Like
The
they have these big name talents in the regular season who just light it up, and then don't do anything when it comes playoff time. They still haven't won anything, and McDavid does not have anything to his name except individual awards.
the same thing with Ovechkin up until 2018. So we'll see if that storyline plays out again, where
Which
McDavid.
speaking of Ovi, I hope he breaks that record because he's starting to
I
eat it
do too.
up.
Dude is starting to tear it up, and I want him to break the record and retire. I mean, in my opinion, he's the greatest of all time. A little biased there, but yeah,
Greatest player of all time?
greatest NHLer, greatest goal scorer. Well, I'll say that.
I was gonna say, he's not the greatest of all time.
I think if you put
Greatest goal
um
scorer? I can go with that until he gets overtaken by Matthews. But
I think if you put Wayne Gretzky, the great one, in today's goaltending with how the goalies now have gotten a lot better than what they were back in Gretzky's timeline. I think you put Gretzky in there today. I don't think he scores anywhere close to as much as he had. I think what was it, 894? I think is the number
I
Ovi's
think
chasing.
so.
So I don't think he gets that much. But or if you put Ovi back in Gretzky's timeline, I think Ovi surpasses 1,000.
All right,
We'll save that debate for another day.
we're gonna have this debate. 'Cause I don't like this debate. I hate this argument. It's stupid.
We'll save it for another day. We are running.
If you put 80s Gretzky again in this time with the training that they had back when Gretzky was playing, and you put goalies today with the same pads that they were wearing in Gretzky's time, Gretzky's still scoring what he did.
Okay.
If
We'll
Gretzky trains in this era, he's still scoring what he did. He's still the
we'll,
greatest of all time. You
we'll
have
save this.
Ovi train in the era Gretzky trained in. He's not as good as he is now and the career he's had.
I'll know that. We're gonna save it for another
Have
time.
Ovi train. I'm telling you, have Ovi train in
We'll
the
save it,
70s.
Joey. We'll save it for another time. We are running a little low on time. And then what was your most surprising move at the deadline? Just real quick off the top of your head.
The Toffoli one. I like the Toffoli move to Winnipeg. I wasn't expecting Winnipeg to get themselves in there, but Winnipeg was made some good moves. I think Toffoli was a great pickup, and I don't think they gave up a lot. I'd have to look at that trade again, but let me see if I can find it real quick. But I think that was a great trade for Winnipeg. Can I find it? Yeah, so it was a 2025 second round and a 2024 third round to New Jersey. I think that was a great trade for Winnipeg. And Toffoli was salary was 50% retained. So that was a great I think that was a great pickup for Winnipeg. It and Winnipeg's biggest problem is scoring right now. They've got the defense and they've got the goaltending. So Winnipeg's a dark horse in the West. Colorado and Vegas right now and Vancouver are all overshadowing them a little bit, but I would watch out for Winnipeg. I think they can make a conference finals run at least.
Okay. Very very good pick. Mine would probably be the Tarasenko trade. I mean, I think we knew he was going to get traded at the deadline. I just didn't think it was going to be Florida that picked him up. Honestly, I thought he would have gone to Carolina.
Which I like that. I like that. I like him being with Aho too. But I think he looks good in the Sunshine State.
So that was my biggest surprise. I was kind of surprised he didn't go to Carolina. That wraps up our NHL talk for the day. Some Today being Sunday, we had a big day in women's basketball. South Carolina held on, beat LSU in the SEC championship. Iowa came back, beat Nebraska in overtime to win the Big Ten. Um, Southern California, dominant showing over Cameron Brink and the squad from Stanford to win the Pac-12. Notre Dame played very well against a strong NC State team. I watched that game this morning. There was some good basketball going on there, and then we'll see who wins the Big 12. I think that game's tomorrow. Um, Going into March Madness, real quick, who do you have winning it all for the women?
The Ohio State Buckeyes. Even though we lost to Maryland. I hate it. I hated it with everything in me. But Juju Watkins this, Caitlin Clark that. Angel Reese this. The 5 demons South Carolina's got running on the court. Don't care. Don Staley this. Whatever. Ohio State Buckeyes. I don't even know. I can't even remember her name. But Ohio State, we got that in the bag. We're in the number 2 seed not that long ago until we lost to Iowa. We got that in the bag. Just watch out. No, honestly, it's probably going to be LSU again because Kim Mulkey's
I don't think
going to sell her soul to go win another one.
LSU has no depth. I think when we're talking about Carolina or not Carolina, a lot of these teams not having physicality. LSU has a little bit of size, but their bench I think had 6 points against Auburn, or actually 6 points the entire leading up to it against before the game today. They had a couple girls come off the bench and do well today, but I don't think LSU's got the depth. They've got some Poa, I think is what her name is, injured. Huge loss for LSU. That makes it even worse when it comes depth wise. I don't know if Kim Mulkey and the Bayou Barbies are going to have enough of that.
Bayou Barbie's crazy.
I don't know if they'll have enough depth or enough oomph to be able to get all the way. I don't know if they make it to a Final Four this year. Um, it'll be interesting to see what the bracket is. We'll be able to make better estimations then. There's a lot of good teams out there this year. I don't think LSU is going to be able to propel themselves through.
You know who I think Kim Mulkey is? One of the sisters from God, what's that movie called? Hocus Pocus. So Kim Mulkey's gonna sell her soul for another natty.
She's a walking fashion statement. We'll leave it at that. Big news coming out of the NFL: Jerry Jeudy headed to Cleveland. I can't remember what. I think it was 2 picks that were sent to
I think it was
Denver.
the second and a third.
So we'll see how that works out. Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco, we don't know what the situation is going to be there.
It's gonna be Deshaun Watson. You
I don't
paid this
know.
man this much. You have to. You paid
With,
this man. You sold this man the organization. You have to play him.
with the way Joe Flacco played in the second half of the season, I think it's a QB battle. It'll be quite the interesting one. But they've added some weapons on the outside. I like the Amari Cooper being there. You've got Jerry Jeudy. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But that about wraps it up for us today. Again, if you've made it this far, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for engaging with all of our content and helping us grow. I can't express how appreciative, at least I am. I know Joey's over there in his mom's basement, smiling his ass off. So thank you guys. Be sure to go get some merch. Check out the website, NutriSafeHealth.com. Get yourself some protein powder. Yeah, shirts, sweatshirts, we got you covered. Everything for the gym. Yeah, just heads up. We'll be releasing again Wednesday, normal timeline. That won't be affected. This was a special, so we're glad to be able to bring it to y'all. Yeah, we'll see you guys come Wednesday night.
All right.
All right. Peace out.